Shalom to the elect of Israel, to the whole flock of Israel, you Hebrew Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians. Got to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. The Most High, the Heavenly Father. His Hebrew name is Yahweh. Not Yahweh, not Jehovah, not God, not Elohim, not Most High, not Lord, not Yah, not Jah, not Ahaya, not Allah, not Abba, not Yahuwah, not Hashem, not Yahweh, Haveh, Vaveh. It's Yahweh. And his only begotten son name in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shai. Not Yahshua, not Yeshua, not Jesus Christos, not Jesus Christ, not Serapis Christos, not Yeshaya, not Yehoshua, not Yahusha, not Jesus. It's Yahweh Shai. So got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rekah, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles, elder, bishop, and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, who teach well, who are the apostles and elders of all of Israel, whether accepted or not. In the sense of salutation to all the occupant, pushing his truth, or believing his truth, or the four winds of the earth, the entire world, shedding light to the hopeful elect. Shalom to the Akwath who are listening learning, you few sisters who are listening learning. I'm Asai from GMS Orlando, Camp Prophet of Doom, coming into another lesson of truth, facts, faith, and edification. Another data edification, Lord was better find. So I titled this lesson, The End of This Last Mortal Empire. And first, this is a copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. This is not for monetary gain. This is for educational purposes only. Lord wills be edified. So let's go here. First one I'm gonna get is this. Bear with me. Turn this volume down here. They got a few videos I'm gonna play. Lord wouldn't it be edifying.
$36 trillion in debt. That's a number so big, it's nearly $1 trillion in debt. That's a number so big, it's nearly impossible to comprehend, but it's still money owed to someone. People often point to China as the biggest lender, and sure enough, they hold about $750 billion worth of it. But here's the thing, China is also drowning in debt of its own. In fact, over $18 trillion worth and counting. So who's holding their debt? A lot of it sits with Chinese banks, but those same banks also own debt from the United States. And American banks, they're holding debt from China and Europe and just about everyone else. If that sounds confusing, it's because it is. The deeper you go, the more entangled it all becomes. Every country is borrowing, every country is lending, and somehow the world is now $300 trillion in debt, triple the size of the actual global economy. But if the world is in this much debt, then who is it all owed to? It's a really simple question, but one with a surprisingly complicated answer. It's not just a weird accounting trick, but a clue that something much deeper is happening under the surface. The answer reveals how the modern world isn't built on stability, it's built on motion. On a never-ending cycle of borrowing, lending, and reinvesting. This is the story of how the engine of the modern world, and what would happen if people really stopped lending. Debt might sound like a modern problem. Just a big scare. Came, they'd pay many thank you. No interest rates, no complicated contracts, just trust. Because for thousands of years, humans understood a simple concept. Sometimes you need something right away, but can only pay for it later. That's all debt really is at its core. Borrowing from tomorrow to solve a problem today. Over time, simple personal loans evolved into something much bigger. Kings wanted castles, empires needed ships and cannons, but no single lender could foot the bill. In the 1600s, England faced this exact same problem. King Charles II was preparing for war with the Dutch, but the treasury was empty, and the nobles refused to lend. So they tried something new. They sold pieces of debt to the public in return for cash of repayment with interest, a bond. It was simple, but it changed everything. States could now raise huge sums of money without raising taxes or draining their treasuries. And by the 20th century, bonds went global. World War I and II pushed countries to borrow at an unprecedented scale, not just to fight, but to rebuild. Then, in 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement made the US dollar the centerpiece of the global financial system. Currencies were tied to the dollar was tied to gold, but gold was limited, and economies had to grow. As the US ramped up spending, there wasn't enough gold to back the flood of dollars in circulation. So in 1971, President Nixon broke the link, ending the gold standard. From that point on, money became what we now call fiat currency. Not backed by gold or anything physical, just by government decree. Governments could now create a
What the hell? Okay. Man, I hope this ain't finna start acting a fool. Hold on here. Salakia.
being a last resort and became the norm. Today, debt is how things get built, how crises get managed, and how promises get kept. And the result? A global debt mountain that now tops $300 trillion, more than 3 times the value of everything the world makes in a year. To put that into perspective, a stack of $1 million bills would be 100 meters tall and about the height of a 30-story building. $1 billion would reach 100 kilometers, high enough to touch the Earth's atmosphere. But 300 trillion is enough to go to the moon and back 50 times. That's the amount of debt that we're talking about. So if every country is borrowing, who are they borrowing from? And if everyone owes money, who's getting paid? When we talk about the national debt, it's easy to picture some big, powerful, shadowy figure pulling the strings and holding all the money. But that's not how it works.
That is how it works. That is exactly how it works. That's exactly how it works, which is the elites, man. They are the puppets that's pulling the strings. And I'm doing this lesson because of the so-called white man's global debt, it's going to be the fall of their empire, their last mortal empire.
Because modern debt doesn't just move in straight lines like we're used to. It moves in circles. To better understand this concept, let's zoom in on the United States, the world's most indebted country.
And it does move in a circle. But it's the elites that controlling this. So whoever this guy is, he's painting a total different narrative than what the scriptures say.
You may be wondering who can possibly lend them that much money. But here's the surprising part. Roughly 70% of the debt is actually owed to Americans themselves. So the US borrows from itself. Here's how it works. We know that governments borrow...
And it's because the real Americans are you so-called Negro, Latino, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians. The scriptures say it. The scriptures talks about Jacob being the form of all things in Jeremiah 51:19. And of the blood, sweat, and tears off the backs of you so-called Negro, Latino, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians is how America was established. So the debt that's really owed is to us. This is real talk, man.
Money by issuing bonds and promising to pay it back with interest, the exact same way that you would borrow money from a bank. So, who is buying these government bonds? Well, most likely you. When you put money into the bank, it doesn't just sit there in a vault. Banks put the money to work, trying to grow it so they can pass some interest back to you, which they do by lending, investing, and of course, buying bonds. As of now, commercial banks in the US hold nearly $1.8 trillion worth of US Treasury bonds, triple the entire GDP of countries like Brazil or Canada. Bonds are an incredibly popular investment because they're one of the safest ways to earn interest on spare cash. Unlike the stock market, they don't bounce up and down every day. Of course, the interest rate can still be changed by the government to help manage the economy. And in the 1980s, yields jumped to over 15% as the government tried to bring down high inflation. And during the COVID recovery in 2020, they dropped below 1% to encourage more spending. But whenever you buy a bond, the rate is fixed until you get paid back fully. So whatever the government does afterwards isn't your problem. A 10-year US government bond today will pay you a steady 4.5% interest per year, which is pretty good considering the near zero risk. And that's a big part of why bonds and debt are so popular. So of course, it's not just banks who buy up the bonds, it's anyone sitting on a large pool of money. Pension funds, insurance companies, investment firms, they all do the same thing: buy bonds and earn interest. In 2024, US pension funds invested a quarter of all their money into bonds. And for insurance company, this number was even higher. Over 60% of their assets were placed in bonds, using them as a reliable way to grow their funds while keeping risk low. This creates...
Welcome to the argument. Not welcome tuning in. Y'all about Shema Shab Rakathum. I got a few videos I want to play showing, this is all Edomite, showing you how this is the last moral empire. Because the kingdom that's coming, we will be immortal. This is the last human empire that will rule the earth.
It's a kind of hidden network where people's savings become loan money for the government. So although it may sound weird that the US is borrowing from itself, it's actually just money flowing from parts of the country where it's sitting idle to parts where it's needed and being spent. When the government pays interest on its debt, that money flows right back into the hands of the lenders, giving them even more spare cash. And what do they do with it? They buy more bonds and earn more interest. This becomes a sort of self-reinforcing loop, where money constantly cycles through the same system by moving from lender to borrower, then back to lender, and then back to borrower, over and over. And the same loop exists between countries too. About 30% of US debt is held overseas, because just like American banks or pension funds, foreign governments and banks also put their spare cash into US bonds. And following the same logic, money flows in when we borrow, back out when we return, and repeats. Now, remember, it's not just the US doing this. Every country is borrowing, and every country is lending. The Japanese savings become loans for the Dutch. The Dutch savings become loans for the Brazilians. And the Brazilian savings, they end up flowing back into American bonds. The world's debt isn't just a pile of unpaid bills waiting to explode. It's more like an interconnected web of circular systems, where money flows in loops from savers to borrowers and back again. Governments borrow, investors lend, and the interest payments keep the cycle going. And while some of that money crosses borders, most of it never really leaves the system. It just changes form, hands, and keeps moving. So if the government keeps borrowing and spending it all, how do they pay back their debt in the future? Well, here's the thing. They simply just borrow more debt to pay back their old debt. And although that might sound reckless, which it kind of is, it's actually the foundation of how the global economy now works. So why does this system just keep going? Why doesn't the world just stop borrowing? Because now we're in a point where everything, from our economy to our politics, is built around debt. The uncomfortable truth is that debt fuels growth. When the government borrows and spends, money circulates into the economy. Businesses earn more, workers get paid, and so they spend more. It becomes a feedback loop that keeps the economy expanding so everyone can be better off. In China, 19% of all government spending comes from debt, meaning 1 in every 5 yuan they spend is actually borrowed. And this figure is even higher in the US, around 1 in $4. That's the same amount of money it spends on both education and welfare combined. If the government suddenly stops borrowing, it would have to spend less, and money stops flowing into the economy. Businesses earn less, workers lose their jobs, and so they stop spending. That very same loop that grows the economy is turned upside down, leaving everyone worse off. Take Greece, for example. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, investors panicked, and suddenly stopped buying Greek bonds because they seemed so risky. Greece was left unable to borrow and quickly ran out of money to spend. 1 in 4 public workers were fired, wages fell by 30%, and over the next few years, their GDP shrank by a whopping 25%. Politicians know this, and so do the people. Everyone wants the government to keep on spending so the economy can keep on growing, and so no one wins elections promising austerity. Spending continues and borrowing becomes inevitable. But it's not just about growth. Sometimes it's about survival. When an economic crisis hits, like COVID in 2020, people stop spending and the economy shuts down. The only way out of this is for the government to step in and cover that spending people are unwilling to do. In a crisis, when people aren't paying their taxes, they have to borrow. In 2020, the US government borrowed an astonishing $3.8 trillion in a single year, nearly 20% of their entire economy. And so did China, Europe, and every other economy out there. It wasn't a choice, but a necessity. Now, remember, when you borrow money, it must be returned in the future. And if a government is already spending everything it collects just to keep the economy going, where does the money to repay old debt come from? The answer is simple. To pay back what they borrow again. And this debt just never leaves the system. In wealthier countries like Germany and Switzerland, this isn't seen as a major problem. Their bonds are considered safe, so they can keep on borrowing at low interest rates, making debt easier to cycle through. But for developing nations, it's a different story. Higher borrowing costs make each rollover more expensive, and over time, the debt starts to feed on itself. Countries like Sri Lanka and Pakistan have found themselves in a debt trap, where they are forced to just keep borrowing to meet the interest payments on past loans. So when people ask in America, why can't we just stop borrowing? The truth is that we can't. The same debt that weighs us down are actually the very pillars that the entire economy was built upon. And this raises an uncomfortable question. Can it really go on like this forever? Because no matter how smooth the cycle seems, there are risks building beneath the surface, risks that the government avoids talking about and that no one really wants to face. As the government continues to borrow, the debt grows, and so do the interest payments. Over time, a bigger and bigger slice of the budget goes back towards paying old loans, not funding new schools, hospitals, or infrastructure. Having a debt to GDP ratio near 100% is now seen as the normal, when a few decades back it would have been catastrophic. This isn't really a problem when borrowing is cheap and lenders are confident, but that all changes with risk. If investors stop wanting to lend, the cost of borrowing suddenly shoots up. One way governments try to handle this is by printing more money. This might sound X, but it comes with a big down. When more money enters the system, it reduces the value of each individual unit, and the result is inflation. Prices rise, savings shrink, and people start to feel poorer. In extreme cases, it can spiral out of control. In Venezuela in the late 2010s, the government printed so much money to cover its debts that the price of goods doubled every few weeks. A loaf of bread that used to cost 10 bolivars suddenly cost millions. The currency became almost worthless, and ordinary people saw their life savings vanish overnight. While most countries don't face such extreme cases, even moderate inflation can cause big problems by making their currency less valuable. The risks are even bigger for many developing countries, as they often borrow in foreign currencies like US dollars as a security, which means if their own currency weakens, paying back debt suddenly becomes more expensive in local terms. And as that burden grows, lenders may start to doubt a country's ability to repay, and it doesn't take long for the mood to shift. Suddenly, investors demand higher interest rates to compensate for the risk, and when governments can't borrow enough, how do they pay back their old debt? Do they cut spending, hike taxes, print more money? None of these options are easy, and they all come with severe consequences. And even if they do go through it, there's no guarantee that they will even make enough money. Eventually, if a country can't find the money and the bills come due at once, the country runs out of options. That's when they default. A default is when a country simply says, we can't pay. It's the sovereign equivalent of missing your mortgage, except it's not just your house at risk, but the entire economy. And worst of all, the government can't just borrow its way out because nobody wants to lend to a defaulter. But when a system becomes fragile and dependent on debt, people start looking for something real. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. Record sums are flowing into gold in 2025, and for good reason. Gold is up nearly 28% this year alone, while the dollar is down almost 9%, trading at a 3-year low. Silver just hit a 13-year high, and mining stocks, the GDXJ index, is up nearly 45%, a staggering move. Even the world's biggest banks are now making bold calls. JP Morgan sees gold corporate, ticker GLDG, trading on the New York Stock Exchange, is trading at approximately the same price it did in June 2018, when gold's price was less than half of what it was today. GLDG is trading at a near 5-year low, while gold is hitting new highs. Gold Mining owns one of the largest gold and copper resource stage mineral portfolios in the Americas. We're talking some dozen projects across 5 countries, located in pro-mining jurisdictions in Canada, USA, Brazil, Colombia, and Peru, with an estimated 12.4 million ounces of gold, equivalent in the measured and indicated category, and an additional 9.1 million ounces of gold, equivalent in the inferred category. Gold Mining Incorporated doesn't just own resource stage mineral properties, it also has a portfolio of publicly traded equities and cash. Their publicly traded equity holdings alone are worth more than $150 million based on the market closing prices of those securities on June 5th, 2025. This now surpasses the current market cap of the entire company, plus they hold $6.8 million in cash, an equivalent of the last reported quarter and financials on February 28th, 2025. Let that sink in for a second. Their portfolio of equities, without even talking about its cash and equivalents in its gold projects, is worth more than the entire market cap. As you can see in this graph, gold stocks have a tremendous gap to close compared with gold's spot price, which has soared. Gold reserves must be replenished. Size, quality, and location matter. And one of the biggest challenges facing the gold industry today is reserve replacement. Large mining companies need new discoveries or M&A activity to replace the ounces they're producing. And that's where companies like Gold Mining come into focus. They're led by a proven team. David Garofalo, former Goldcorp CEO, Amir Adnani, serial mining entrepreneur, and ex-Newmont executives. And the insiders own over 10 million shares, putting real skin in the game. Lastly,
Man,
look at the
them
key
just
shareholders of Gold Mining Incorporated.
them just forerunners. They don't own nothing. They just forerunners, man.
David Garofalo, former Goldcorp CEO, Amir Adnani, serial mining entrepreneur, and ex-Newmont executives. And the insiders own over 10 million shares, putting real skin in the game. Lastly, look at the key shareholders of Gold Mining Incorporated. Ruffer, BlackRock, Sprott, Morgan Stanley, GDXJ ETF, UBS, and Goldman Sachs, just to name a few institutions that are all key shareholders. Management and insiders, as well as key shareholders, all have positions in this stock. It's currently trading at just 76 cents right now, as of June 12th, 2025.
All right, let me get this other clip here. I got a few of these. And it's just the downfall of Esau Edom. Because I tell you, when since he ended that by dealing with gold, which is the fall of Esau Edom, man. The Lord said in James 5 that this gold and silver is corrupted. Let's play this one. His gold and silver is corrupted. And there's going to be a witness against him, man. Everything that they have, what's the word? His term. Everything they have confiscated. It's going to be a rust against them.
That is
Let's play
certain.
this.
No matter how long they reign,
Hold on.
every empire falls. That is certain. No matter how long they reigned and how far their rule stretched. From the Romans who ruled for over 1,000 years to the Ottomans who spanned continents, and the USSR That is certain. No matter how long they over 1,000 years, to the Ottomans who spanned continents, and the USSR that changed the political landscape of the modern world. So is the empire we're living under today
Is how fast.
We have bounties beyond those known to the people of any other day.
American democracy is obviously limping on both feet.
America is not the greatest country in the world anymore.
Nope.
The US empire is falling, and there are 3 symptoms of its impending demise that we can see from looking to the past. Let's start with the oldest of the bunch. These videos are made possible by our supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to help us tell more stories like this, you can become a paying member through the link in the description. Now back to the video. The Roman Empire oversaw the lives of millions of people. Remnants of its great reign still stand in cities across the world, a testament to their reach and influence in the lands they conquered.
Never has Rome been greater or stronger than now.
But then, after 1,000 years of domination, it fell. And just like Rome wasn't built in a day,
Hold on. What's that scripture? They said in Wisdom of Solomon, because she just made the point about their monuments, like the Arch of Titus. Let's play this again.
through the link in the description. Now back to the video. The Roman Empire oversaw the lives of millions of people. Remnants of its great reign still stand in cities across the world, a testament to their reach and influence in the lands they conquered.
Never has Rome been greater or stronger than now.
But then,
Well, that's it. Wisdom of Solomon 2 and 4 reads, "And our name shall be forgotten in time, and no man shall have our works in remembrance. Our life shall pass away as a trace of a cloud, and shall be dispersed as a mist. Their name is the Edomites, and overcome with the heat thereof, which is the mist from the missiles. For our time, and in the kingdom, the elites, when they got to bring back the nation, their nation, the Edomites, so their heat going to and overcome with the heat thereof. On this side, all the Edomites going to die at the low level, but the elites get to hide in bunkers. But in the kingdom, they got to work on that heat until they go into that last heat, which is that bonfire. For our time is a very shadow that passeth away, and after our end, there is no returning." Meaning they ain't gonna return to rulership. When they return, it's gonna be in chains, and they have to work for 1,000 years. But they will not return into rulership anymore. For it is fast sealed, so that no man cometh again. Come on, therefore, let us enjoy the good things that are present, and let us speedily use the creatures like as in youth. Let us fill ourselves with costly wine, which they got the best wine in their cellars, and ointments. They get the best medicines. And this guy on the screen on the other video, you see John D. Rockefeller, where they did a lesson on him. He took over the medical industry and banned every doctor that used herbs to heal. Let us fill ourselves with costly wine and ointments, and let no flower spring pass by us. Let us crown ourselves with rosebuds before they be withered. Let none of us go without his part of our voluptuousness. Let us leave tokens. This is what the point I want to make. Let us leave tokens of our joyfulness in every place, like the Arch of Titus, like the Colosseum in Rome. For this is our portion, and our lot is this. Let us oppress the poor righteous man. Let us not spare the widow, nor reverence the ancient gray hairs of the age. Let our strength be the law of justice, for that which is feeble is found to be nothing worth. So they left their tokens in every place.
after 1,000 years of domination, it fell. And just like Rome wasn't built in a day, it didn't fall in one either. Instead, the fall of the Roman Empire was death by 1,000 cuts. But there's one factor in particular we're going to look at: internal decay.
At the height of its grandeur and its glory, a civilization so powerful.
Make that point all the time. The lesson I just did, the Antiochus effect, internal decay. That's what the Lord is doing to the so-called white man, as he did to Antiochus Epiphanes, as he did to Herod. This is an internal decay, man. The worm shall cover them, and the worm spread under them, as it said in Isaiah 14:11. which is corrosion.
It could never be conquered from without, yet it found the seeds of its destruction within itself.
There was a huge disparity between the lives of the elite and the commoners.
Mm.
Rome's elites lived in grand estates, hosting lavish, decadent banquets where they'd feast on peacock tongue and wine from naked waiters.
Every one of these senatorial families has holdings all over the Roman Empire. They're the equivalent of small multinational corporations. They are wealthy in a way that is impossible for us to understand.
The poor lived a very different reality. They worked menial jobs and lived mostly on bread and porridge, living in overcrowded, badly built buildings, prone to collapse and spreading disease.
The games are all about the Roman emperors giving the people what they need, and it's always described as bread and circuses. They had to feed the people of Rome, but once they were fed, they had to be entertained.
Let the games!
See, this show you that Esau has never been balanced. He has never had equity, or used equity. The people live in poor conditions while the elites live good. See, this is it's the same thing happening now, man. And now the average so-called white man is doing worse than you so-called Negro, Latino, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians.
There were famines, peasant uprisings, and slavery, and the Roman tax system disproportionately impacted the lower classes, while the wealthy often avoided taxes through exemption or corruption.
This is now a new era of Roman history. Rome is no longer what it was. Rome is in decline.
The middle class was shrinking, and the economy became increasingly polarized between the very rich and the very poor, all fueling resentment and instability. So what does this tell us about the US?
Home they've always dreamed of, the happiest investment they have ever made.
The middle class was once a symbol of the American dream. It meant owning your own home with a white picket fence, a car, kids going to school, a perceived ease and quality of life that couldn't be found anywhere else in the world, and that anyone could achieve so long as they worked hard enough.
We are a prospering people, wherever we live, or earn our livelihood.
Yeah, that was a time when you entered into the grocery store, it was only women in there, man. The men was working, the women stayed at home. And even then, they show you the so-called white man empire wasn't great because he still had to go to work. We ain't gonna have to work. We ain't gonna have to do nothing in our kingdom, man. Nothing.
But for the past few decades, that's all become increasingly out of reach for lots of Americans.
Some people skipping meals because they simply can't afford it.
The number of people experiencing homelessness in a single night went up 12%.
Every year, hundreds of thousands of people are literally asking for donations to afford medical treatment.
Our roads and bridges are crumbling, our airports are out of date, and the vast majority of our seaports are in danger of becoming obsolete.
But Americans from the grocery store to the gas station are seeing their budgets tighten every single month.
And the changes suggested would mean higher taxes for the average American family, widening America's already massive income gap.
90% of the wealth is right here in the top. And then the lower middle class, they've got 0.3% of a piece. Yeah, they have some crumbs there. And the poorest, they have no pie. In fact, they have less than no pie. They actually have a bill for pie. They're in pie debt.
They're struggling to meet rent or mortgage payments, repay college loans, to repay loans for a car.
Hold on. Did I just see what I just saw? Hold on. This sign said Bazarus.
They have no pie. In fact, they have less than no pie. They actually have a bill for pie. They're in pie debt.
They're struggling to meet rent or mortgage payments.
Bo's rough. Oh man, Bozarth, Salakia, Bozarth. They're close.
Repay college loans, to repay loans for a car.
While the wealthy have become steadily wealthier, wages have been stagnant and costs of living have surged. And it's not like these changes are mutually exclusive. It's off the backs of workers, off the exploitation of the American masses, that the wealthy continue to engorge themselves.
Elon Musk has officially become the richest person in the world. His net worth has crossed the $400 billion US dollars.
Hey, like the pastor was saying years ago, hey man, 400 billion, that's a basket case, man. Well, they did say you got to have 200 billion plus to be up there. But he's still a basket case, man. The elites got trillions, man. He's not the richest man in the world. These devils is something else.
Mark.
Companies buying out the housing market, insurance companies making healthcare unaffordable, politicians taking money from lobbies to protect corporate interests and fill their own pockets, and the working class is well aware.
Hoarding wealth is so harmful, so unethical, so rage-inducing.
Billionaires should not exist. So you talk about teacher's salary, $2,000 in rent, $400 car payment, you got insurance, you got groceries, electricity. Like, I don't understand how people are affording life right now.
For 5 stitches, $3,800.
What?
Like, it's so freaking hard to live here.
North America is one big scam.
And then there's the internal social and political decay. People have become disenchanted with the illusion of American democracy, of its promises of equality, of equal opportunity for all as long as you pick yourself up by your bootstraps.
You can see a sea of people all united.
Hey, see the Lord, man. That's in 2 Ezra 9. When there shall be seen uproars of the people and earthquakes, man. We are watching the decline of the last so-called white man's empire, man.
Under one cause. They are protesting for racial equality.
And this is all because of the greed. Like this sign said, greed kills. This is all because of debt. Habakkuk 2 and 6. That thick clay, man.
Murder of a healthcare executive has led to online popularity for the shooter.
Mangione has emerged in some circles as a sympathetic figure fighting the system.
All this leads to political instability, economic trouble, and social unrest, which weakens the empire at its core. But an empire is bigger than its center. It's a network of vassal states serving the core's interests. And keeping all those entities in check is done through both soft power and hard power. That brings us to symptom number 2. To understand soft power and how it plays into imperial decline, let's look at the Ottomans.
It was a huge empire, dominated by a Turkish dynasty that had its origins in Asia Minor.
The Ottoman Empire was one of the most powerful and enduring empires in history, spanning 3 continents at its height. It was a hub of cultural and scientific innovation, producing advancements in medicine, astronomy, architecture, and engineering that changed the world.
They ruled a considerable mix of peoples and faiths.
There was no great history of ethnic tension, even though there was a history of massively complicated ethnic and confessional coexistence.
It lasted almost 600 years, until it didn't. One factor that contributed to its demise was its waning influence over the peoples and territories it had under its control, also known as the loss of soft power. Soft power is about being more persuasive than coercive, about getting people to comply without using force. In the case of the Ottomans, it was a delicate balance of diplomacy and cultural influence.
That's what America did after dropping them bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, man. Even before that, when they created NATO to take down the Soviet Union, they ain't have to use force. They had to show their power, which is what is that? Job. This is Job 24. In Job 24 and verse 22, he draweth also the mighty with his power. He riseth up, and no man is sure of life. This is how he drawed the rest of the nations to them, man, to join the UN through their power. Babylon the Great, I'm talking about America.
But over time, the empire's ability to foster loyalty among diverse groups was eroding, aided by rising nationalism within these communities.
The Greeks were the first to rebel against the Ottoman shackles.
The minute you start getting a political world, this system is going to break down. And that is what happens in the 19th century, and that is the great conundrum for the empire.
People stopped buying into the vision of the empire and began to break off and pursue their own interests. Now, the US has been really good at soft power. It began after World War II, when the US positioned itself as a global leader promoting democracy, economic growth, and cultural influence.
Chose the king because he can buy more with his wages than any other worker on the globe.
It is the most important idea that the United States has contributed to the world. Citizens of every rank can expect to have a better, richer, happier life.
It helped rebuild war-torn Europe, set up major global institutions where it continues to hold significant power, and has exported music, television, and pop culture across the world for decades. And the messaging of this soft power has been consistent and clear.
Shining city upon a hill. After 200 years, she's still a beacon, still a magnet for all who must have freedom.
But for soft power to work, for people to buy into the fantasy and want to participate, they need to see credibility and moral consistency. Now, just to be clear, the US has violated the principles it preaches since its founding, not to mention since its emergence as a global hegemon. It seems the majority of people were willing to overlook that and buy into the American dream. But the illusion is falling apart.
The mob tore down scaffolding, battled their way through the last line of police defense, and broke into the Capitol building itself.
At home, the land of democracy, liberty, and human rights hasn't kept up the best image in recent years. And it's not any better abroad. The US has spearheaded and overseen devastating wars, crippling debt, human rights violations, and environmental damage across the world, which has made it hard to take preaching of democracy and freedom seriously.
America no longer charts a course and therefore has lost all rights to set it, and even more so to impose it on others.
Disillusionment with American values is growing, and in its panic, the empire continues to thrash and bully to stay relevant. That's where hard power comes in, and brings us to the third symptom of the fall of an empire. This one is best illustrated by the Soviet Union. Now, the USSR ideologically rejected the idea of imperialism, but the reality is that it looked and acted like an empire.
The Soviet Communist Party has not faced a serious internal threat to its political rule since the 1920s.
There was a centralized authority overseeing expansion and control of a collection of republics and satellite states, where movements for autonomy were suppressed. What tethered these states together was a unified ideology, communism. But it was also hard power, military might. And that costs money.
It is here, in Red Square, that the superpower Soviet Union holds its military parades, displaying its might for all the world to see.
At its strongest, the Soviet Union had 5 million soldiers stationed around the Union, and pursued wars and conquests to maintain and expand its reach. Then there's all the money spent on the arms race during the Cold War. Money spent on propping up parties in proxy wars across the world, and money spent on wars like Afghanistan, a protracted 10-year-long conflict that cost them $50 billion.
The superpower from the north occupies Afghanistan with more than 100,000 troops, a modern mechanized army.
Eventually, the cost of keeping the empire in check became unmanageable, and the economy took a hit. By the late 80s, people within the Union were struggling with soaring poverty and a low quality of life, with no strategic wins to show for all that money spent. Military and ideological overextension drained not only the economy, but public morale as well, until people got fed up.
In Moscow, the hammer and sickle is lowered for the last time.
Sounds familiar.
All estimates agree that the cost will be at least $1 trillion. The Bush administration never expected the war to drag on as long as it has.
The fall of Kabul to the Taliban marked an abrupt end to America's longest war. The war cost American taxpayers about $1 trillion.
The US carried out long, brutal, expensive wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, with nothing to show for it except instability and devastation and financial loss. Then there's the constant ideological wars. The war on communism, the war on drugs, the war on terror, the war on China and Russia. There's a constant boogeyman in the ether to justify US military spending. The US maintains the most bases in the world at over 700 and spends hundreds of billions of dollars on the military every year. Billions of dollars on the military every year, more than the next 10 countries combined. It's funding Ukraine in its war against Russia. It might support Taiwan in a war against China. Billions of dollars spent, and we can't remember the last war the US has actually won. But last year, an undeniable awakening happened.
This
has been a senseless and a deliberate slaughter, a genocide, and it is happening on our dime.
For over a year, Americans and the rest of the world have watched US politicians from both sides of the aisle cheer on and fund the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza to the tune of billions of dollars. It has shattered the idea that the US is a beacon of justice and human rights, and irreversibly cemented the hypocrisy of American moral exceptionalism. The empire has never been so exposed. And it's shown Americans, who back in the imperial core continue to struggle to live decent, dignified lives, where all their tax money is going, and where it's definitely not. The US has been an empire since its very conception. From colonizing Native American land, to conquering territories overseas, to dominating world politics through global institutions, military might, corporate interests, and foreign meddling. Of all the empires that have risen and fallen, none have come close to having the reach and power of the US. So the idea of it losing its hold over the world seems inconceivable. But while all these symptoms are unfolding and the US empire erodes from within and without, it's not doing so in a vacuum. It does so in the middle of a global shift in geopolitics, in a world that's becoming increasingly multipolar, with countries choosing new allies, new frameworks for collaboration, even new currencies.
Guard. Ezekiel 38, man. That guard. Even though the Russians is Edomites, the Lord did something beautiful, which is having America to ally with these other Edomite countries, create NATO, take down the Soviet Union, just for the Lord to put hooks into the Soviet Union and build them back better. Build them back better, man.
The aim of the alliance is to challenge the economic and political monopoly of the West.
All of which is not good for the US. See, the way the global system is designed is, in many ways, for the benefit of America. From reliance on the dollar, US aid, and US debt, to fear of US sanctions, vetoes, and foreign intervention, we live in a world full of systems and institutions designed to prop up the US and keep the rest of the world in check. But these systems aren't going to live forever because they're inherently unsustainable. They rely on the exploitation of peoples across the world and within the imperial core, and bank on them buying into the bit that all this is necessary, is better for them, and protects them. And as life becomes more unaffordable, countries more destabilized, governments more autocratic, and our environment more unlivable, people eventually wake up. And that's usually the beginning of the end.
Hey, that's heavy she said that. At the end, people wake up. And that be the end of it, man. The Lord, hey, Yahweh Shah said, let me get this. That's fire. She said that. I gotta play that again. This is John 6:44 reads, no man can come to me except the Father which have sent me draw him, and I will raise him up at the last day. Then you got the one in Hosea. That's fire. She said that, man. Hosea 6:1, it reads, come and let us return unto Yahweh, for he hath torn and he will heal us. He hath smitten and he will bind us up. After 2 days will he revive us. In the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. See, then shall we know, if we follow on to know the Lord, his going forth is prepared as the morning, and he shall come unto us as the rain. The Lord, remember Deuteronomy 32:2, he gonna rain his doctrine down this doing this shit to steal among the tender earth. And he shall come unto us as the rain, which is the truth, as the latter and former rain unto the earth. And hey, the Lord said he gonna rain his doctrine down and this shit to steal among the tender earth, man. So let me get this one. And I'm showing these different clips just to bring out one precept, man. The fall of the so-called white man's empire is coming through his thick clay. Habakkuk 2:6 is dead, man. And like that chick had that sign up, greed kills. I got two more here. That was, let's see. Let's get this one. Actually, I got 3 more. 2 more after this. But hey, it's okay. This ain't about views. This is about truth. And this is the Lord got the so-called white man revealing
We live in
iniquities. And it's all through debt.
we live in a time of decline. And that when an empire declines, which is something we hadn't gone through because empires don't decline very often. But let me tell you from the history books, a little bit we can tell, it's not fun to be in a declining empire. Much more fun when the empire's going up, which was the last century or a century and a half of this country, the ride up. We are now on the ride down. China is winning. We are losing.
Richard Wolff, the famous economics professor from the University of Massachusetts, has come out and said that the fall of America is upon us. Now, is this true? To understand the argument, we need to rewind to the Vietnamese War. Do you remember what happened in what they call the Land of the Dragon?
Just to give you the context, the United States lost the war in Vietnam. When I say that in my classes, my students look at me, they never heard such a thought. America, as they know from the comic books they read as children, only wins wars. It doesn't lose wars.
Well, if we read through the history books, we find out that it's true. In 1973, American troops were forced to leave Vietnam, and in 1975, the Communist Party of North Vietnam captured Saigon, marking the official win for the communists. But this was not the only war that America lost. In 2021, the US withdrew its forces from Afghanistan after 20 long years in the country, fighting against the Taliban, who now run Afghanistan. As Wolff said, that's a pretty good sign that America lost. In Iraq, it was a similar story where the US were forced to withdraw in 2011. These are not the types of things that you generally hear from an empire at the peak of its powers. Normally, they can just easily win and have their own way.
Let me give you a couple of more, just bits of getting what decline means. Last week, something happened on the part of a country called Indonesia. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a remarkable country in Asia made up of 18,000 islands in the Pacific. It's a huge country. The population of Indonesia is 280 million people. Makes it one of the largest countries in the world. Let me remind you, the population of the United States is 330 million. 280 isn't that far less than 330. It's an enormous thing what they did. They joined the BRICS. They joined a full partner of the BRICS.
BRICS is an acronym that refers to a group of 5 major emerging economies. You've probably heard of them: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And now that I is a double I because Indonesia have joined. They have aligned themselves together to collaborate with each other on areas such as trade, investment, economic growth, and political coordination. In a way, you can think of it as them coming together and joining forces as a form of combating the power of the United States and their allies. BRICS, however, is not just a small alliance, it's a lot more powerful than you think. The core of BRICS is the C, China. China has a population of 1.4 billion people. Second biggest player is India, which has a population of 1.45 billion people. Russia's population is 145 million and is the largest country by land mass. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but they have a pretty strong military too. If we add all of the BRICS population together, including the newly joined Indonesia, they account for 45% of the world's population. The United States population is about 341 million, or 4% of the world. That's a big discrepancy.
In the words of, Mickey Mouse, uh-oh.
Now, if you think that this is an unfair comparison because it's one country versus an alliance of countries, okay, fair enough. Well, let's compare it to the G7. The G7, made up of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States, has a combined population of 777 million people. This accounts for 9.7% of the world's population. Again, 9.7% versus 45% does not look very strong.
Those odds are not so good, no matter how you cut it.
Okay, well, you might argue that this is just population. It's not economic might. It's not financial capability. Okay, Fair point. Let's look at that. The way we measure economic strength is through what's called GDP, gross domestic product, aka how much a country produces in a given year, how much outputs they give.
Okay, so if you take the BRICS together now, they are about 35%, maybe a bit more, total output of the world. If you add up each of those countries' total output in a year, and you add them up, they account for 36%, more or less, of the world's output. Now let's compare that to the United States and its major allies. Those are called the G7. Okay, that used to be the dominant player of the world. That used to be what world trade meant, what they did. Together they, that's all of them, now account for about 28% of the world's output. Do you understand?
So in terms of output, GDP, the G7 produces less than the BRICS. They have a much smaller population and produce a decent amount less goods and services. That gives you a feel for how the world order might be changing. The once dominant nation of America and its allies is not as strong as it used to be.
Now, if you're looking to where the wealth is, you go east, not west.
Back in the day, if you were a poor third world nation and you needed money to build your infrastructure and grow your economy, there would be...
And then eventually all of Africa is going to join the BRICS, man. It tell you in Ezekiel 38 that Libya is going to join them, man. South Africa is already a part of the BRICS. So these other African nations are going to join too, man. The Lord code in having these Edomites to create NATO to take down the Soviet Union, just so the Lord to show his power. How he put the hooks in the Soviet Union and turned them back. This is the Lord magnifying his power on the earth. And to tell you in Wisdom of Solomon 12, hey, the Lord will, let me read this. Because I ain't want to go too long, because I got two more clips. Wisdom of Solomon 12 and 15. For as much then as thou art righteous thyself, thou orders all things righteously, thinking it not agreeable with thy power to condemn him that have not deserved to be punished. For thy power is the beginning of thy righteousness, and because thou art the Lord of all, it maketh thee to be gracious unto all. We make this point all the time. The Lord showed Esau mercy thrice, the Greeks, the Romans, and this empire. And they messed it up every time. When men would not believe that thou art full power, is the point I want to make. The Lord had these Edomite countries to create NATO to take down to take down the Soviet Union, just so the Lord to show his power in raising up the Soviet Union and giving them a different spirit with more allies. Wisdom of Solomon 12 and 17. For when men would not believe that thou art of a full power, thou showest thy strength. And the Lord is showing his strength in putting the hooks into the jaws of the Soviet Union, of Russia now, and turning them back to the old Soviet Union Cold War mentality. And among them that know it, which is the prophets, thou makest their boldness manifest. This is the Lord magnifying his power, man. And for you that don't know it, the Lord got his men to tell you, hey, the Lord got Russia. The Lord raised up this guard. And if you don't believe it, guess what? Habakkuk 1 and 5. Behold ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously. For I will work a work in your days which you will not believe, though it be told to you. You know damn well these Edomites, Babylon the Great, and these other allies never thought that the Soviet Union would come back this hard. I will work a work in your days which you would not believe, though it be told to you. Even Poland, I did a lesson a few months ago. Poland said they would not fall a second. No, they said they would not fall a third time to the Russians because Soviet Union bust their head twice, Poland. So now Poland said they wasn't going to wait on NATO to advance their military power, their missiles. I did a lesson on this some months ago. Poland said they would not fall a third time to the Soviet Union, man. They will not wait. And that's that Joel 3. Beat your plowshares in the swords and your pruning hooks in the spears. Let the weak say I am strong.
be one country that you would call. If you needed to build a hospital or a road for transport or a school for education, you would get on the phone to a US diplomat or US business and say, hey,
Right.
we need a loan here. We need your technology, or we need your resources or your know-how. But today, these third world nations are instead picking up the phone to an entirely different country.
Right.
If you're a poor third world country, as we used to call them, and you need money for build railroad, or you need to find places to sell your exports, you direct your diplomats first to go to Beijing, because that's where it's at. If you can't get a good deal there, well, you might go to London or Washington. But whatever you are doing, you're going to play them against each other. You're going to say to the Americans, oh, that's the best you offer? Let's go the other place, see what they offer. You want to know why most of the railroads being built in Africa today are being built by the Chinese?
Yep.
There's your answer. They got a better deal.
That's
In
it.
Kenya, China funded the Standard Gauge Railway, which connects
and Russia, this new alliance. Russia is the military and China is the monetary, man. Just how London is the military for Babylon, for this beast system, America is the military and London is the monetary. Well, China is the monetary and Russia is the military, man. And Russia got way more power, way more missiles than America do. And don't forget about Turkey.
China has invested in the development of the Hambantota port and Colombo port city. In Venezuela, China has helped build power plants and sign joint ventures with the state-run oil companies. Across in Egypt, China are a key partner in the development of the new Suez Canal.
You see, America left Venezuela out to dry. Well, they got help.
Our area, no matter what quote-unquote third world country you go to, no matter which continent, you will find the Chinese there.
Because you live in a country which is pretending to itself that none of this is going on. It's either never discussed or we turn it around and we say, the Chinese are becoming aggressive in the world. Huh? They're doing what exactly we did. You know how the United States became a big, powerful country? By doing to Europe what the Chinese are doing to us. It's not new, it's not different. The emperor in Rome didn't suffer the way the average people did. The emperor in Persia or the emperor in Greece, it doesn't matter. All the empires show the same phenomena. One more example, and then I'll stop and tell you what this all means. So 15 years ago, all the car companies said, hooray, here's how we hold on to our profits by making these private cars for everybody. And they all went to work to compete. And there was a winner. As of 3 years ago, one company figured out how to make the best quality electric cars and trucks at the lowest price, which is what competition is supposed to result. And I'm sure you all know the name of this company. It's the BYD Corporation. Let me do that again. B as in boy, Y as in yellow, D as in dog, BYD. Now, your faces give you away. You never heard of this place or this thing. What is it?
Of course, we all thought he was going to say Tesla. So why does Wolf say that BYD is winning the EV game? Well, they have found a way to make an electric car for a price of, well, let me ask you, how much do you think they sell this electric car for, called the Seagull? $40,000 like the Tesla Model 3? $28K like the Nissan Leaf? No, BYD Seagull sells for $11,500. That is 1/4 of the price of Tesla's cheapest car. Now, to say that they're winning the EV race, that's a controversial statement, but if you go outside of the US, BYD cars are selling like hotcakes on a cold winter's day. Okay, in China, obviously BYD are at the #1 mark, having top EV sales charts in that country for several years. But expand out to Asia. In Thailand, they are the top selling electric vehicle brand. In 2024, the BYD Dolphin led the EV market with 13,000 units sold. In Australia, they only entered the market in 2022, and now nearly 1/4 of every EV sold there is BYD. In Brazil, BYD has successfully introduced both electric buses and passenger EVs into the country. country. In 2023, BYD's Dolphin became the best-selling electric car in Brazil. You see that these quote-unquote third world nations, let's take out Australia from that, but they're sourcing things from China because China can provide them what they want at the most competitive price.
China is winning. We are losing.
Okay, now let's fast forward to what's happening in the current day. One of the most worrisome supply chain strangleholds over the West and over the United States is, without a doubt, China's near monopoly status of critical minerals. This past week in breaking news, China suspended exports of 7 critical rare earths to all countries. Shipment stops risking shortages for US defense and tech. Trump's next move was to sign an executive order on minerals, invoking the Defense Production Act to fast-track US mining, targeting copper, uranium, and rare earths. Here's quoted, "This is a gold rush for America's future. Nobody's stopping us." The American businesses that will help solve the supply chain issue are taking on some of the world's most pressing problems. And there's big opportunity here because right now there are 0, not 1, operational tungsten mines on US soil. The Defense Department now funds rare earth projects because tungsten is indispensable for military, and like I said, there are no active mines on US soil as we speak. There is huge opportunities for the companies that can revive this industry. This is the perfect time to talk about the sponsor of today's video, American Tungsten Corp, US ticker DEMRF. It could become one of the first tungsten producers on US soil and a leading one after a full decade of no tungsten mining whatsoever domestically. Think about the potential. 0 operational mines on US soil, and China has already made export bans. China achieved control of approximately 70% of global rare earth production and 85 to 90% of the processing capacity, creating a strategic chokehold on global supply chains. American Tungsten, ticker DEMRF, is looking to help balance this out and become the first tungsten producer on US soil. They are advancing a North American past producing mine in a region with minimal environmental and regulatory barriers compared to overseas competitors. The company's flagship asset used to be the 5th operational tungsten mine in the USA. The US Department of Energy classifies tungsten as a critical material. Tungsten has the highest melting point of any metal, making it indispensable for applications that require high heat resistance, durability, and strength. AKA, it's very important. Do your homework on American Tungsten. Okay, let's get back to the BYD American thing. Why don't we see BYD and...
So that's the point on that. Let me go here. Bear with me here. We got 2 more. Both of these is short. We see this fall, man. It's a slow, painful death from the inside out. So let me hit this one here. I ain't gonna play all of this, Lord willing. Just want to get these points out of here. This one only 10 minutes. Come on.
Israel-Iraq war.
Since the turn of the century, there hasn't been a single year that the US wasn't involved in a foreign conflict. That might sound...
Hold on. Run this back. Let's run this back.
As it's continuing to launch strikes against Iran.
Iran has tonight launched retaliatory strikes on Israel.
The United States has officially entered the Israel-Iraq war.
Since the turn of the century, there hasn't been a single year that the US wasn't involved in a foreign conflict. That might sound hard to believe. After all, politicians constantly pledge to bring the troops home, or that they want global peace. But that's not entirely true. When we look at the real winners and losers, another story emerges. Because while all the world agrees that war is a tragedy, a small group of people are quietly making huge profits. In the days following Israel's attack on Iran, shares in defense giants like Lockheed Martin, RTX Corp, and Northrop Grumman surged. And this isn't some isolated reaction, it's part of a broader pattern. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, Lockheed stock jumped by 35%. July 5th, when Israel unexpectedly raided the West Bank, prices jumped again by almost 30%, netting billions for the company's biggest shareholders. In fact, 2024 was one of the most profitable years ever for US defense companies, increasing sales by 30%. But while their earnings soared, most Americans were dealing with the opposite. Inflation remained stubborn, interest rates high, and household budgets were under real pressure. At the same time, priorities were made clear. Military spending went up, but domestic programs were slashed by $63 billion. Clearly, war is making someone rich, just it isn't ordinary people, and certainly not those fighting in the military. It may seem obvious why companies get rich on conflict, but peel back the layers and a bigger picture emerges, a system designed to keep the money machine flowing. Here's why war is insanely profitable, just not for you. Today, 13% of the US budget goes to the military. At a first glance, that might seem like a necessary thing. After all, governments always needed to protect their citizens from foreign threats. But zoom out and a different picture begins to emerge. Over time, a deeply interconnected system has developed, one that brings together defense contractors, policymakers, lobbyists, and the medias. This system doesn't just respond to threats, it shapes how those threats are perceived and how the government reacts. To understand how this works, you need to look at one of the most powerful and least understood forces in the modern world, the military-industrial complex. Here's how it works. Companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman don't operate like normal businesses. They don't sell to everyday people or compete on an open market. Instead, they sell straight to the government. And if there's one thing the US government does a lot, it's buying weapons. In 2023, they spent over $877 billion on the military. That's more than the next 9 countries combined. And of that, over half went to private defense contractors. Whoever is able to win these contracts can make huge profits. And like any business, they depend on demand. But in this industry, demand increases when conflict does. And that demand doesn't just come from war zones. It's shaped by how the media reports on them. Just this week, Trump called for a CNN reporter to be fired over her coverage over the US airstrikes on Iranian nuclear sites. But here's where it gets interesting. A left-leaning outlet ran the headline, "Trump unloads on reporter in wild rant." It focused on his personal attacks and language, emphasizing outrage and drama. Whereas a right-leaning outlet said Trump continues to blast New York Times and CNN over weaponizing intel. This version framed the media, not Trump, as the problem, and cast him as defending military credibility. Same event, 2 completely different narratives. And that's exactly why I use Ground News, today's sponsor, as it shows exactly how stories are framed depending on their political lean, side by side. You can see how the left emphasizes one angle and the right another, and how the truth might sit in between. Their blind spot feature is also key, as it flags stories that are being ignored entirely by either the left or the right, so you're not just getting half the picture. If you want to stay informed without being manipulated, scan the QR code or go to ground.news/invisible for 40% off the Vantage plan. That's what I use and I highly recommend it. The link is in the description. In a healthy open market, like the restaurant industry, companies compete by trying to deliver better products at lower prices. If one restaurant makes tastier, healthier, or cheaper food, customers reward them with their business. But the defense industry is different. These companies aren't competing to feed people. They're competing to sell weapons. And the outcome they're optimizing for isn't customer satisfaction, it's conflict. The more unstable the world becomes, the more contracts they win. Lockheed Martin saw sales jump.
It's all about greed. The decline of the so-called white man's empire is all about greed. Let me play this last clip. I want to go no longer. So check this out. So I had just saw this. This is the big, beautiful bill. It's Project 2025 legislation. Check this out. The decline of Babylon the Great Empire. All right.
history, but history right now is happening right here in front of us, and so let's cover it.
Hold on.
We normally do straight history, but history right now is happening right here in front of us, and so let's cover it. The reckoning has begun. If you think this won't affect you, congratulate. That so-called big, beautiful budget, it's not a budget. It's Project 2025 in disguise. We normally do straight history, but history right now is happening right here in front of us, and so let's cover it. The reckoning has begun. If you think this won't affect you, congratulations. You're exactly who it's coming for. Trump voters may keep looking away, but the damage is already here. That so-called big, beautiful, it's not a budget. It's Project 2025 in disguise. A full authoritarian blueprint dressed up as fiscal policy, and it's about to hit you where it hurts. Let's break it down. When disaster strikes, no one's coming. Sections 80307 to 80309/climate resilience and FEMA funding. Floods, wildfire, hurricanes, no federal help. Your town will burn, drown, or blow away, and all you'll hear is silence. When your healthcare vanishes, that's in the bill too. Sections 44141, 44122, and 44131 add work requirements for Medicaid. If you miss a form, you lose coverage. If you're in a blue state, your funding gets cut. And veterans, they'll face longer waits, fewer doctors, and less mental health support, while Trump brags about how much he spent at his golf course. Section 44110, make sure you won't get care either. Your hospital may shut down, and when you need a doctor, you'll find that the service no longer exists. And your grocery bill, that's going up too. Trump's tariffs combined with the cuts to food assistance in sections 10008 and 10012 mean higher prices for produce, gas, and everyday goods. And yes, the neighborhood could lose their SNAP benefits at age 64. What about the institutions holding your...
Isaiah chapter 10, verse 1, it reads, "Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless." And as the Lord said, because the so-called white man put his hands on the apple of the Lord's eye, the so-called white man is targeting you so-called Negro, Latino, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians. Don't be distracted on what the real truth is. The so-called white man, the elites, is targeting you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians, because they know that you are the apple of the Lord's eye. They know this. And they have had a hatred with us since the garden. Genesis 3:16, the Lord said, Genesis 3:15, he's going to put enmity between the Edomites and the Israelites, between his seed and our seed. This is a perpetual hatred. That's why I tell you in Amos 1:11, they have had a perpetual hatred. And he's targeting you so-called Negro, Latino, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians. That's what this is all about, man. This is all it's about. This is Amos chapter 1:11. This is because of his perpetual hatred. And his people is just collateral damage and casualties of war because they are targeting you Israelites. They are trying their best to get rid of us. And this is why the Lord said he speeded the time up. Because if he didn't, it will not be nobody here when Yahweh shall return, man. But that's not a part of prophecy. And the scripture said, if it were possible, he shall deceive the very elect in Matthew 24. But he will not deceive them. Why? Because 2 Corinthians 2:11 said we are not ignorant of Satan's devices. This man is creating this new world, allegedly, which is, I love to make the point about watching the Jetsons when I was young, man. I used to love watching the Jetsons. This is what a so-called white man is trying to take it. You see in the Jetsons, they flying around in chariots or cars that don't need to be driven with wheels. They show you in the Jetsons, everything will go through the RFID micro C-HIP, man. You remember Rose, the robot? This is all part of the Jetsons, man. And to get rid of the Israelite, hey, food, hold on. AIDS ain't working. Cancer ain't working. Right? AIDS ain't working. Cancer ain't working. None of the diseases is working. They're using the food. It's killed off a few hundred thousands, right? By giving people high blood pressure, diabetes. Food ain't working. The drugs ain't working on the Israelites anymore. AIDS and cancer ain't working on the Israelites anymore. So what are they going to do? They put it in the air. It's in the food. It's in your drinks. That ain't working neither. So they got to do something else, man. They got to do something else to get rid of Jake. So they throwing their own people in the gulag, man. They throwing Edomites in the gulag. Why? Because they know that the Lord scattered Israelites throughout the four corners of the earth. And they don't know who Israel is. This is why they do census. They do census so they can see how many Negroes over here, how many Puerto Ricans over here, how many Mexicans over here, how many Dominicans over here. They don't know. So they just targeting everybody. To get their numbers down to 500 million, they're going to target everybody. They don't care. The scripture tell you that he don't care about his own people. It says he's a nigga at his own table. He's not satisfied with his own portion. Remember what Esau did in Genesis 25? He despised his birthright. Do you understand what it means to despise your birthright? That means whatever your father got, you get it if you're the oldest. And this will help your generation for generations down the line. 2,000-3,000 years down the line, your generation will be established. The same way how the elite kids is born, they don't got to go to school, they don't got to go to college, they don't got to work at no Fortune 500 company. Them niggas they be born and get the jet set and ride around in McLarens and Lamborghinis all their life and just jet set, man, to islands and just do whatever. They don't got to work. They don't got to go to school. Esau despised his birthright, meaning he didn't care about his lineage. He didn't care about the wealth that his father had that was passed down from the Lord, from one generation to another, that chosen lineage. He didn't want that. He wanted to get his out the mud. So the Lord used Yahushua as Isaac to get a so-called white man a carnal blessing, a temporary carnal blessing. That's what I tell you in second. Let's get this in 2 Corinthians. Now, I'm going to let the lyrics of this play. It's only a 5-minute video. This is 2 Corinthians. Remember, he's targeting the Israelites. And I also make this point. You know how he can get rid of all Israelites? If he can kill off all Israelites, right? He's going to create cyborgs. You're going to be merged with machine, right? That's what Klaus Schwab and Noah Yuval Harari was talking about, right? Merging man with machine. That way he can get rid of the Israelite DNA. Let me just start pouring down. Damn, that means we can't come back every third and fourth generation of reincarnation. That means he can exterminate the Israelite rulership, the throne of David, which he can't. But this is what the so-called man trying to do. He's trying to eliminate Israelites so we can't get the kingdom. If he can get everybody to take the RFID micro C-HIP, which is going to lead you to being a cyborg, then there will be no more sperm. The only ones that get to have sperm on earth will be the Edomites. They'll be the only one that come back every third and fourth generation through reincarnation. Meaning they will control earth and life existence forever. Because everybody else will just be a robot. Controlled by them, allegedly. He's trying to wipe out the Israelites, man. But he got to get rid of the seed, which is through the men. See, this is what these devils is doing. All this, everything that's going on is leading to the Edomites and the Israelites, that perpetual hatred. And he's trying to wipe us out so we can't get the kingdom. Remember, it tell you in Revelations 12, he's the accuser. He's the accuser, man. Let me read this. Amos 1 and 11, because I never read it. Then we come back to the 2 Corinthians. Amos 1 and 11, it reads, Thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Edom and for 4, for I will not turn away the punishment thereof. Why, Lord? Because he did pursue his brother, 1. Because he pursued his brother with the sword, 1, and did cast off all pity, 2, and his anger did tear perpetually, 3, and he kept his wrath forever, which goes back to Genesis 3 and 15. See? So this is 2 Corinthians. That goal is to get rid of us, man. 1 Corinthians 4 and 17. It reads, let me start at 14. 2 Corinthians 4 and 14. Knowing that he which raised up the Lord, Yahushua, shall raise us up also by Yahushua, and shall present us with you. For all things are for your sakes. See, the Lord said, made the world for Israel, and all things are for your sakes, that the abundant grace might through the thanksgiving of many redound to the glory of God. For which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. And as our outward man perish, and we are being renewed day by day, the so-called white man is waxing worse in being carnal. He got to. That's his lot. For which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day in the spirit. And Esau is waxing worse. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, working for us far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we look not at things which are seen, which is that's what the carnality do. You look at things that are seen, but at the things which are not seen, which are spiritual. For the things which are not seen, for the things which are seen are temporal. That's Esau's blessing. But the things which are not seen are eternal. See, he don't know spirituality. All he knows is to be carnal, man. And he got to get rid of you, Jakes, so he can create his temporal, his carnal birthright, which will never happen. You can never get rid of the Israelites.
Town together. Section 50002 and 50003, gut funding and oversight. Say goodbye to your pharmacy, post office, or bank, and don't expect anyone to fix it. Then there's your job. Sections 90004 through 90006 allow a massive civil service purge. You could be fired and replaced with an unqualified loyalist. Your pension slashed.
Eventually, we will be fired.
Not spared. Section 30061 bans DEI programs. Your daughter's school will stop teaching critical thinking and start teaching obedience. If she's not white, wealthy, or male, she's left behind. Books gone. The federal government.
If your daughter's not white, wealthy, or male, she gonna be left behind. Talking to you Israelites, man. Hey, the Lord said America was going to nourish us for a time, and then we got to lean on the Lord. If you ain't leaning on Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua, Salakia, if Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua hasn't reactivated you to trust and lean on them fully, you done.
We'll now decide what's woke and erase anything inconvenient.
See? And if you woke, as it say in was it Isaiah 29? You make a man offender for a word, and that one in Isaiah 59 and 15, you through, man.
Especially your history. Energy projections repealed. Protections were repealed. Sections 42108 and 42301 dismantled the clean air laws, opening the door for wildfires, blackouts, and toxic pollution. Your 401k, don't get comfortable. Wall Street doesn't like chaos, And this bill delivers plenty. Markets will tank, and your retirement fund will go with it. Section 20001 escalates Indo-Pacific conflict. Trump lights the match, and your kid gets the draft notice. Section 44125 removes the LGBTQ protections and access to care. Gay, trans, and non-binary Americans denied services, expelled from school, pushed out of public life. And while billionaires get MAGA-branded savings accounts, you can't even file your taxes for free. They're cutting.
And remember what it says, Exodus 16, they shall take away, they that fear the Lord shall be cast out of their houses. They shall take away their goods. If the Lord going to let the so-called white man do that to those that fear Yahweh by Hashem Yahushua, what's going to happen to those that don't fear the Lord, man? What's going to happen to those that trust in their protector who's taking away his protection?
Food, healthcare, and education to fund tanning bed tax breaks. They even slashed child tax credits and funding for childcare. You're expected to work more with less help and higher cost. Your community center closed. Your summer programs cut. Sections 41009 and 80301 wipe out block grants, historic preservation, and public parks. The professionals who make government work fired. Section 90004 to 90006 dismantle civil service protections. Scientists, disaster coordinators, public health experts replaced by political hacks who do whatever they're told. Section 44001 bans states from regulating AI, education, tech, or data privacy for 10 years. That means your state can't protect you from tech giants even if it wants to. And just in case you were hoping someone, somewhere, might hold power accountable, Sections 50002 and 5003 and 80121 got oversight agencies, the people who catch fraud, investigate pollution, and monitor corporate 131. If your governor tried to help you, this bill punishes them for it, and Trump said it himself. I have the right to do whatever I want. This bill gives him that power using your tax dollars. This is not a warning. This is happening. It's theft wrapped in a flag. It's censorship, cruelty, control, and collapse. Call your senators at 202-2. If you
This is Job. Get my last couple precepts here. Just back in Job 24, it reads, let me see here. Bear with me. Again, Job 24 and 22. He draweth also the mighty with his power. He riseth up. He riseth up, and no man is sure of safety. Nobody is sure of safety, man. And this is what the Lord said here. This is what Psalms chapter 10 and 15 reads. And the brother Damawafi bring this out a lot. Fire precept. This Psalms 10 and 15. Break thou the arm of the wicked, and the evil man seek out his wickedness till thou find none. And it's going to be wickedness in the earth until the so-called white man is removed. It reads, verse 16, the Lord is king forever and ever. The heathen are perished out of his land. See, this is a future prophecy because in the eyes of the Lord, this movie is already over, but we living it out. Lord, thou hast heard the desire of the humble, which is the Israelites, the righteous, the hopeful elect. Thou will prepare their heart. And this will happen now. The Lord is prepping us up for Jacob's trouble, man. The Lord is numbing us up to what's about to come. Thou will prepare their heart. Thou will cause thine ear to hear. That's Isaiah 43 and 8. The Lord said, bring forth the blind that have eyes and the deaf that have ears, which is the hopeful elect, to judge the fatherless and the oppressed, which are you Israelites, you so-called Negro, Latino, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians, that the man of the earth, which is Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, may no more oppress. May no more oppress, man. But as it said in Job 24, read it one more time. Job 24 and 22, he draweth also the mighty with his power, which is the so-called white man. He riseth up, and no man is sure of safety, and no man is sure of life, man. This is my closing precept. I want to read this Habakkuk 2. Because all this is happening because of their greed, their pride. Their greed and their pride, man. Those are two words of some of the so-called white man. His greed and his pride, which is unscrupulous. This is Habakkuk 2 and 6. Shall not all these take up a parable against him and a taunting proverb against him? And this is what the other nations is doing now, man. They're taking them that taunting proverb against America and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his. How long unto him that laden himself with thick clay, which is his debt. Now, this word unscrupulous, because this is the so-called white man, best described according to the World Wide Web. This is the word unscrupulous. It reads, having or showing no moral principles, not honest or fair. This is similar words. Hold on here. Let me turn this. I'm done with that now. Let's play these similar words.
Unprincipled.
Unprincipled, of a person or their behavior not acting in accordance with moral principles. Unethical, not morally correct. It is unethical to torment any creature for entertainment. And then it say in Proverbs 12, right? What'd he do? Let's read it. He tortured creatures with no morals. Proverbs 12 and 10. A righteous man regard the life of his beast, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. Here go.
Immoral.
Not conforming to accepted standards or morality, which is the Isaiah 24 and 5. He changed the laws, right? Broken the everlasting covenant. Here's another one.
Amoral.
Lacking a moral sense, unconcerned with the righteous or wrongness of something. He's immoral. Lacking a moral sense, unconcerned with the righteousness, with rightness or wrongness. Here's another one.
Untrustworthy.
Not able to be relied on as honest or truthful. That's a so-called white man. That's your government, your system. Let's get another one.
Shameless.
Of a person or the conduct. And what should our conduct be? Seeing this, how this nigga is moving with his own people. How should our conduct be? Seeing how Esau's moving with his own people. Characterized by or showing a lack of shame.
Reprobate.
Unprincipled, often used as a humorous or affectionate reproach.
Reprobate.
He's a reprobate. Another one. Exploitative, making use of a situation or treating others unfairly in order to gain an advantage or benefit. Or the KO. That's what this is.
Exploitative.
Making use of a situation. What's that devil said? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Making use of a situation or treating others unfairly in order to gain an advantage or benefit. Or the KO. Problem, reaction, solution. This is the so-called white man. This word here is up under the word unscrupulous. Let's get another one. Corrupt. Having or showing a willingness to act dishonestly in return for money or personal gain. See, everything is through the so-called man's greed and pride. Let's get another one. I'm getting all these. Corrupt. Cast to act dishonestly in return for money or personal gain. Corrupted. I'm sorry, I hit corrupt again. Corrupted.
Corrupt.
Which is the same difference. Here is dishonest.
Dishonest.
This is fraudulent.
Fraudulent.
Unjustifiable, claiming or being credited with particular accomplishments or qualities, which is what the New World Order. Cheating.
Cheat.
Dishonorable.
Dishonorable.
And all the scriptures call the so-called white man this. Bringing shame or disgrace on someone or something. And they say he had consulted shame to his house in Habakkuk 2. Also in Proverbs 10, Proverbs 19, he had consulted shame to his house.
Dishonorable.
Bringing shame or disgrace on someone or something. This is why this is not the time to be an Edomite. No one want to be an Edomite. Find out who the Edomites are at this time.
Deceitful.
Guilty of or involving deceit, deceiving or misleading others. Didn't it say he was loosed out of his prison to deceive the nation, to deceive the world? Yeah. Devious.
Devious.
Underhand.
Underhand.
Guileful.
Guileful.
Having or showing sly or cunning intelligence. They take the wiles of the devil in Ephesians 6. One of the words is cunning, his trickery, conniving arts. That's the so-called white man. Here it is, cunning.
Cunning.
Having or showing skill in achieving one's ends by deceit or evasion. And this is what they're doing. The least of the flock should draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. Disreputable. Let's get this.
Disreputable.
Disreputable. Wicked.
Wicked.
These are all the words under unscrupulous.
Villainous.
Villainous. This one of the words in Isaiah 32:6. It said the vile will speak villainy. See, this is the so-called white man right here, man. Bad, evil, wicked, villainous. What's this?
Roguish.
Roguish. Sinful.
Sinful.
He's the man of sin. 2 Thessalonians 2. Every word in here, you can get a precept for it.
Ignoble.
Ignoble, not honorable in character or person. Huh? Shady.
Shady.
What else? Shifty.
Shifty.
What did the Lord say when in Psalm 73? The Lord say he put the so-called man in slippery places. Look at one of the words for unscrupulous.
Slippery.
Slippery. Look, doggy.
Dodgy.
Dodgy. Dishonor. Let's say dishonest or unreliable.
Dastardly.
Dastardly. Wicked and cruel. Isaiah 32. The vile man, right? The vile man. He's cruel, man. Hey. This is where unscrupulous for the so-called white man. Lord was edifying. Got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh. Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rekah Qudash. Double honors to the apostles, elder bishops, and elders of great millstone, rule well, who teach well, who are the apostles and elders of all of Israel, ready accepted or not, and the sincere salutation to all the Akim, pushing their truth and believing their truth of the four winds of the earth. Didn't tell you where shedding light to the host elect. Shalom to the Akwath who are listening and learning. If you who are listening and learning, to tuning in. May Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah continue to bless you in your houses. May the blessing of election be upon your houses. Till next time, I say Shalom. Wa Abba.